I do Addicks. I'm going to tell a couple of stories that kind of flow into each other. They are traditional stories that I've learned from traditional storytellers, not from books, but I have checked the facts on some of the stories using books and the internet and things like that. I learned how to tell stories from my grandmother, Carlotta, who was Cherokee. She had a farm in the mountains in northern Georgia, state of Georgia, just south of Rome, Georgia, just south of a Cherokee reservation, which was just north of that, across Tennessee and the Carolina. Her folks come from that area up there. And I'd go down every summer for about 6 weeks. We take the train to Hiawatha from Minneapolis to Chicago, and then they put the car that we were on onto a train that ran north and south from New York to Miami. And the train that headed south, we'd get to Rockmart, Georgia at about 7 o'clock in the evening. And the train would stop right there in the middle of a field. And they'd let my mom and I off the train. Of course, all the passengers are looking to see, why did this high-speed train stop right there? There'd be an African-American man who'd come down with a wagon to bring us up to the main house because the road was all rutted. You couldn't get a car down there. And then while I was with her, every morning she'd wake me up at dawn and bring me down to an abandoned barnyard. I thought it was so important to me, the location, that I actually have a painting made based on a photograph I took in about 1960. So you can see the abandoned barnyard pretty much the way it was in the 40s and 50s when she taught me storytelling. Every morning we'd go down there and I'd look at this barn and she would tell me a story. The next morning we'd go down there again at dawn and she'd brush her hair, and if I could tell her the story that she told me the previous day in my own words, but to her satisfaction, she would reward me by telling me another story. So all the way through, from about age 6 all the way through high school, we did this. The stories became more and more informative, I guess, as I got older. And she was making me a culture carrier, a story carrier for her community. But she said, when you come across a story that's about a boy, tell it back to me in the first person as if I was the boy who had the experience. But don't tell it as if it happened in the past. You don't know nothing about the past. Tell it as if it happened now. And one of the stories she told me was about thunder and lightning. I was terribly afraid of thunder and lightning. We'd have these thunderstorms that come down from the north through the valley. And then thunder and lightning, you've never seen such terrible storms. And I go and hide in the house. So she said, let me tell you a story about that. And this is a story that she told me. It's pretty much a traditional Cherokee story, I've discovered. She didn't say so at the time. This is a story she told me that she asked me to tell back in the first person. So I do. When I was a kid, I was afraid of thunder and lightning. Get under the bed. But when I was 7, my great uncle gave me a gun. And this is it, the actual 22. You can see it's short. For a 7-year-old, the little tag on it says, they use it to kill rattlesnakes with. Now I'm not sure if I killed him with this thing or if I just clubbed him to death, because the area was full of rattlesnakes down there, and so I was walking around. I had to have a gun. And I'd walked up the road behind the house, which went up into the mountains, the piney woods, that were at that time public property of state forest. And I was coming back when I was about 8, I guess, and I had killed a chipmunk. Shot it, and I knew chipmunks could eat. But I was going to bring it back and show it to my grandmother, but I actually got something with the gun. And so I'm walking up the road, or the farm road behind the house, and there's a snake in the middle of the road. A black snake with white markings on its chest, about as thick as my arm. And it spoke to me. It said, "What you got, boy?" I said, "Chipmunk?" Snake said, "Give it here, boy." So I laid the chipmunk down in the dirt road, and snake came up to it and flipped its tongue over to kind of get a sense of it, and then swallowed it. Snakes, when they swallow, their teeth point backwards. Once they glomp onto something, you're not going to get out of there. So slowly it swallowed the chipmunk, and as it got the bulge of the chipmunk in its throat, the snake slithered off the road into the woods. And so I was able to walk by, got to my grandmother's house. She said, "Did you get anything?" I said, "No, ma'am, I didn't get anything." About a year later, I went out hunting and I got a rabbit. And I hunted and not had any trouble on a number of occasions, but I was coming down the road. Here's a snake that got bigger. I could tell it was the same snake. It had white markings, and I could tell it was the same snake that spoke to me and said, "What you got, boy?" I said, "Rabbit." Said, "Give it here, boy." So I take it out of my pocket, jacket pocket, and I laid it down on the road, and the snake comes up, and it's big enough it could swallow that rabbit. And about a year later, I was coming back. Must have been 11 or 12 by this time. And I got in a raccoon. Good eating raccoons, sir. And I was coming down the road carrying this raccoon, and there's a snake, and bigger now. Bigger than I was around, and long. About the size of a good sized tree trunk. And I said, "What you got, boy?" I said, "Raccoon." "Give it here, boy." Well, of course, I took it out of my jacket pocket, laid it down in the dust, and the snake just gobbles it down. I get back to the farmhouse. My grandmother says, "What you get? Did you get any hunting? Get anything?" And I say, "No, ma'am." Just as I had with the rabbit, I had not said I got anything. Nor with the chipmunk. Why, I don't know. I didn't. A few days later, I'm up the road again, and I hear a commotion over in the woods, thrashing around, and I never heard such a noise. Just trees were falling down. So I, of course, got off the road and walked over to see what was going on, and my rifle with me. As a kid, I wasn't afraid of anything, so I had my rifle, 22 short, probably not very powerful. But I get into this clearing, and here's a snake, okay, big snake. It's wrapped around something, squeezing it, crunch up its bones so that it would swallow easier, I guess. So I was about to turn away, and whatever was in the coils of the snakes would help me. And I stopped. Turned around, and the snake said, "Go away, boy, not your business." I was about to turn away, and the voice said, "Help me, please help me. I'll be your friend if you help me." You could see kind of sparks coming from the inside, and I figured the snake had caught a young thunderbird, maybe. Thunderbirds are pretty huge animals. And I was about to turn away. The snake said, "Go away, boy." And of course, when you get spoken to like that, you don't go away. You turn around. And the snake looked at me and I said, "Go away, boy, not your..." I took my gun. And I shot the snake in the throat in that white patch. I shot it again. This thing holds about 12 short rifle cartridges. And I shot it again. Didn't seem to phase it. We're 22 short, so it didn't seem to hurt a bit. I could tell that the slugs went into the throat of the snake, but didn't do much damage, but it was bothering him. I shot again and I shot again, and the last shot I took, when the gun was just on his last cartridge, was enough that the snake released its coil. It was just enough that whatever was in there flew away, got loose. It's not. So the snake turned and looked at me. Now snakes, when they're about to eat something, they can look in the eye and you're paralyzed. Okay, that's how we catch rabbits and mice and chipmunks, as they look them in the eye. You can't move. I don't know why. And it looked me in the eye and I was petrified. I couldn't move. And the snake came closer and closer and closer. And opened up his jaws. You don't want to look down the throat of the snake. It's nasty. And suddenly, there's a tremendous flash of light. And a sound of thunder. And that was enough to break the spell. I turned it around. And behind me, I could hear flashes of lightning. I knew something was lightning was striking that snake. And so I turned around. And there it was coming after me again. The lightning didn't seem to phase it a bit, so I ran like crazy down towards the house. And behind me, I could hear. I stood there in the doorway just while getting dark, and I heard coming down that road. Thunderbirds fly above the clouds. You don't see thunderbirds. And above the clouds there was this tremendous commotion. It sounded like every thunderbird that ever lived was flying above me. And as it passed overhead, there was a voice that said, "I'll be your friend forever." And then there was a voice of all those thunderbirds, and they said, "And we'll be your friends forever." And then they were gone. And after that, I was never afraid of thunder and lightning. I'd go on the front porch when the storm was coming, just sit there, watch the wind blow the leaves, and see the thunder strike out in the pasture. Didn't faze me a bit.